Welcome to today's AI-enabled leadership webinar. I'm Stan Robinson, and my co-host is Mike Russell, who is a change management, digital transformation, and leadership expert. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, if anyone is short on time, if you're stopping in just to get a sense of what we're talking about, but can't stay for the whole time, what I would like you to do is go ahead and take a picture of the QR code in front of you and bookmark the AI readiness assessment. This QR code will take you to a page where you can fill out a short self-assessment. It will take you less than 7 minutes to complete, and it'll give you a sense of where your organization is in terms of readiness to start integrating AI technology into your organization. It's based on a number of different parameters, ranging from the talent that you have available to your resources in terms of computer systems and other considerations. So we will show this QR code again at the end, just in case you're not able to get it right now. In connection with that, we also offer a complimentary consultation on the results of your self-assessment afterwards. And at the end of the presentation, we'll share our contact information and a calendar link to get a complimentary personal consultation where we can review your results and give you some insights as to what to do next. So what are we going to be talking about today? We'll talk about some of the things that business leaders need to think about when evaluating the impact of artificial intelligence on their organizations. We'll start with business strategy, and then we'll talk about some of the risks and rewards associated with this type of technology. We'll talk about how to prepare for the impact that it will inevitably have on your workforce, some of the resource requirements that you'll need to implement AI into your organization, and some of the legal and ethical considerations that you'll want to think about. Starting with business strategy. One of the challenges that a lot of us are having with the rapidly advancing world of AI, particularly since the advent of ChatGPT, which captured the public imagination by storm about a year ago, is that there's so many new things happening, there's so many new tools coming online that it's easy to get caught up in the shiny object syndrome. In other words, what's the newest AI tool that I can look at, because there's so many of them out there that have so many different capabilities. What we would like to caution you is to start with your strategy, your business strategy first. So you already have a business strategy in place that you've thought about and planned, and you're in the process of carrying out that strategy. Rather than fall to the temptation of thinking about, okay, how can I use this latest AI tool, whether it's ChatGPT or Bard or Midjourney or the recently announced Google Gemini, which is on the way. Rather than thinking about how you can start using these tools, start with your business strategy and the top strategic priorities that you have, and then look at which of your strategic priorities you can use AI to support. So start from a strategic standpoint first, then think about, okay, among, say, my top 3 priorities, for example, which of these strategic priorities can I actually use AI to bring some value to? Now, that said, going forward from now on, you will definitely want to use artificial intelligence as part of your strategic planning process, because these tools will only help you get better at putting together your strategic plans in terms of how you want to move forward in the future. But again, right now, you'll want to think about, okay, what are my strategic objectives? If you haven't already put together your plan for 2024, you're definitely in the midst of that process at this point. And you can look at, okay, how can I incorporate artificial intelligence tools into my strategic planning process such that my strategic plans will be even more effective in the coming years? So start with your business strategy, not with, okay, how can I make best use of this latest AI technology? Now, some of the risks and rewards associated with AI. This is a topic of discussion, and it will be from now on because of the power of these tools. So in terms of the risks, these range from extremes like extinction risk as far as the human species in the event that AI eventually takes over, so kind of a Terminator scenario, all the way down to more immediate concerns that are much more short term, and that's what we're really going to be focusing on here. So risks and rewards. Is AI a Pandora's box where we don't know what we're going to get when we open the box, but we know it's not going to be good? Or is it more like in Aladdin's lamp, where we simply ask the genie for whatever we want and it comes to pass? Well, the good news is that we have some control, at least at this point, as far as what direction this technology is going to take and how it's going to impact us. So let's start with some of the risks of these technologies, and then we'll talk about some of the rewards. One big one on everyone's mind that's an imminent issue is potential job displacement. And this will come up again when we talk about how to approach the impact that AI is going to have on your workforce, because that's something that you definitely want to get ahead of. One of the things about AI, at least at this point, is that it is extremely good at certain tasks. Now, most jobs are made up of multiple tasks and also involve a degree of human judgment. So it's true that this will vary by industry and by job, but in a lot of cases, AI is not yet ready to take over jobs per se, but there are many tasks that may be done manually now, or that involve a lot of data crunching and summarization and analysis that can be automated with AI. So we'll talk more about this, but rather than replacing a lot of jobs, at least in the short term, AI is going to replace a lot of tasks that can be automated that are associated with jobs. And we'll talk about a little bit about what business leaders can do to think about how to actually use AI to enhance what workers are doing rather than completely replace them. Data security. That is a long term issue that's been around for years, and AI simply adds another dimension to it. So the security of data under the overall umbrella of cybersecurity as a whole is only going to become more important over time. And we've already started to find out with tools like ChatGPT that are so readily accessible that people started using these tools as soon as they came out. And some employees didn't realize that they should not be using these tools with proprietary data, confidential data, data with personally identifiable information. And so as a result, some companies like Apple, Samsung, and others ban their employees from using tools like ChatGPT for work purposes outright. Now, over time, companies will figure out exactly how to handle some of these risks. ChatGPT and other companies, OpenAI rather, the owner of ChatGPT, companies have already started to implement enterprise models to help protect proprietary data so that you don't have the chance of data leaks as a result of employees uploading data to these tools, and then this data later being used for training purposes. And enterprise models of these tools help to prevent that. But data security is an enormous issue. Another risk is the risk of bias in training data. And this is one that companies and all types of organizations are already dealing with. Because since information from the internet and other sources has been used to train these tools, the processes that people have used in the past and that organizations have used in the past oftentimes have incorporated human bias into them. And these large language models have simply picked up these biases in the course of what they're doing. So one notable example is that Amazon, which hires a tremendous number of people, started using artificial intelligence to help screen candidates as far as the hiring process. And what they had to find, what they had to do as a result of what they found is they had to put the entire project on hold because they found that there was gender bias against women. And that was due to past practices. The training models that they used looked at hiring practices for about the past 10 years, I believe. The challenge was that the hiring practices for certain positions, especially over the past 10 years, were heavily weighted toward bringing in males because most of the applications for those positions were men. And that was incorporated into the whole process of using AI to screen candidates. So I said all of that to say that the issue of bias is one that you need to be aware of. It's one of the many reasons why you need to keep humans in the loop for all of these processes when you're bringing AI into your organizations, because humans will introduce the element of common sense and being able to look at some of the outputs and make sure that they make sense, especially given the fact that generative AI can make mistakes. And all of us have heard about hallucinations and the ability of some of these tools to produce answers to questions that sound perfectly plausible. They may even provide sources as far as the answers to some of the questions that you may query them with, but the answers that they generate may be totally wrong. And the sources that they cite can even be wrong. So common sense, keeping a human in the loop are things that you definitely want to build into your processes because of some of these risks, and we've only touched on a few. Now, let's move to a lighter topic, some of the rewards, the upside of this technology, because that's really why we're here talking about this subject, because the potential of this is so enormous. And we're talking about this in a business and an organizational context in terms of the upside, but the upside extends far beyond the world of business to areas like healthcare and science and many, many other areas. Now, one of the rewards of this technology that was very quickly evident when ChatGPT was introduced, for example, was increased productivity. A lot of people found that ChatGPT, just as one example, and some people had used products in the past like Jasper and other tools to help with their writing and content production. And so one thing that people realized very, very quickly is that these tools could help with writing content just based on a few prompts. And so you could use it to write everything from blog posts to articles to social media posts to books. And it could produce good content. Now, that said, one of the things that we always caution people about is to take the output. Now, in this context, we're talking about content, for example, from ChatGPT, and have a human being review it and tailor it to the voice of the person or the organization, whatever is appropriate, but not simply to use the output from these generative models in the case of ChatGPT without reviewing it. That is a misuse of this information, and a lot of people have found that that is a bad idea. Many people have heard the story of a lawyer who is presenting before a judge and used ChatGPT to gather some sources to bolster their case. And when the judge reviewed the sources that were cited in the attorney's documentation, these sources were nowhere to be found because ChatGPT had fabricated them. And unfortunately, the attorney had not checked their sources before presenting them. Now, you may be thinking, well, that's just common sense. I mean, how could you do something like that? Well, the point is that people do that as an organization, as part of your guidelines on how to use some of these tools, you need to make it explicit and clear as far as what to do and what not to do. But that said, increased productivity is one of the benefits of these technologies that is low-hanging fruit, so to speak, because it's so evident and so easy to do in many cases. Now, better decision making, the ability to incorporate some of the analytics and other capabilities of these tools into the decision-making process. So it can be like having another person in the room that has access to a lot of information and who you can query. You can actually have a conversation with back and forth and present different scenarios and get yet another opinion for you to consider and add into your decision-making process. These tools are not oracles that you go to for the final answers on the questions that you bring to them. They should be just just as the name implies, a tool that we use to help us in our work processes, to help us be more effective. So one of the biggest things that we all need to keep in mind when it comes to these tools is that we should be using these tools to serve us, and that we always need to review the output and make sure that it makes sense for our specific objectives. What will inevitably happen as AI progresses, just as what happens with most technologies, is that we will see brand new capabilities that we cannot even imagine yet. So by definition, I can't give examples in the way of AI because I don't know what's coming when I say things that we can't even imagine yet. But let's use an example from the internet and the advent of smartphones. When smartphones first came out, no one realized that this would lead to industry-changing additions to the marketplace, like an Uber. So smartphones came out, was like having a computer in your pocket that you could use for a number of different things that 20 years before the advent of smartphones, people would have said there is absolutely no way that you could have a video camera, a phone, geolocation devices, and on and on and on in a device that you could put in your pocket. Well, smartphones came out, and some people realized that we could use this to basically create a competitor to the taxi industry. Hence the advent of Uber and Lyft and other types of businesses that people never would have realized. And the same is going to be true with artificial intelligence. So that is, on the positive side, one of the rewards that will inevitably result from these technologies. Now let's move to the impact on your workforce. AI is already having an impact on the workforce. In fact, it's been impacting the workforce for years through different implementations of artificial intelligence behind the scenes. It's just that now the speed at which these technologies are progressing is accelerating. And this is becoming something that we're being forced to deal with immediately. So when you're thinking about, okay, we want to implement these technologies into our organization, our competitors are going to be doing it. This is not something where we are in a position to just sit on the sidelines and watch. We don't want to be the next Blockbuster Video as Netflix comes along, and we can see it coming because we all see AI here. So one of the things you want to do is address the concerns that your team has as far as how artificial intelligence is going to impact them. So you want to get ahead of this. You'll want to think about it. You'll want to think about, okay, what's our game plan for implementing these tools into our organization in a way that's consistent with our values as an organization. And we'll talk a little bit about legal and ethical considerations shortly. But one of the things that you want to definitely do intentionally is start to address concerns that your team has about the impact that this will have on them. Now, what do we mean by augmented intelligence? Well, we're talking about AI, and in the normal course of conversation, AI means artificial intelligence. But another way to look at AI is as augmented intelligence. Now, what do I mean by augmented intelligence? Essentially, I mean the ability to use these tools to help us be more productive and to add to what we're doing rather than replacing us. Now, granted, we are not going to get around the fact that in some industries, AI is going to have a major impact and displace some jobs. But one of the things that we will want to be thinking about is, okay, how do we help our employees upskill and add skill sets around how to use these tools more effectively, such that instead of simply displacing people, we're able to help them move up the chain to more strategic types of work, while AI is being used to help with formerly manual tasks that were in some cases disliked by employees. If we're talking robots, for example, how do we use them to do dangerous tasks that we don't want humans to do if there's a viable alternative? Now, one thing that was just announced a couple of days ago is Microsoft entered into a partnership with the AFL-CIO, the largest labor union in this country, possibly in the world, to start to look at how can we get the workforce, and this is workforce broadly speaking, involved in the development and implementation of some of these tools. So just to start to talk about how to bring these tools into our businesses and organizations in a way that helps the organizations be more effective, but at the same time protects the labor force from more disruption than is necessary. And how can we actually fund some of these efforts, like the educational opportunities to teach the labor force about how to use some of this technology more effectively? So it's good to hear that this type of dialogue is in place with big tech companies like Microsoft and large organizations like the AFL-CIO. And I'm sure that there are going to be many, many other partnerships like this going forward, because this is something that will take collaboration from industry, from the government, from educational institutions, and other organizations and institutions in order to help it work most effectively for all of those who are concerned. Now, resource requirements, and a lot of these considerations, as you can see, tie into each other. There is overlap because when you ask, okay, what resources do we need as an organization to start to effectively bring AI into our company? Well, one of the biggest resources is talent. And we've just been talking about the workforce. So there's a lot of overlap here in terms of the considerations and how they intertwine to affect each other. In terms of talent, one of the things you'll want to think about are, okay, what talent do we already have in-house that can help us with this digital transformation? this aspect of digital transformation. What talent might we need to bring in from the outside if we don't already have the existing talent in-house and or we're not in a position to educate and upskill our internal talent to the level that we need to bring in these types of technologies. So what do we have in-house? What do we need, talent do we need to hire? And in some cases, what types of things might we need to outsource? And so those are considerations that you want to be thinking about. Data. Data is the oil of AI. Everything is based on data. Who is going to manage and own the data that's involved with this? We talked about concerns about data security and how do you handle your proprietary data, data that you may have internal secured that has personally identifiable information. Well, you want to be able to use AI as a tool to work with this data, but you also want to make sure that it's managed properly so that it's secure. And in terms of data ownership, well, one of the most powerful applications of AI is going to be on our own internal data as a company. But what are instances where we may want to use third-party data as part of our processes? And who's going to own that data in the long run? Another consideration will be, are we going to use existing tools that are out there, like the ChatGPTs, the Midjourneys, and the many, many others that are out there and that are coming? Are we going to use those tools and build on top of them, or basically go out to them for the information that we need and then work with the output in-house? Or are we going to build our own AI models? And so building our own extensions to these tools, wrappers around these tools, how are we going to do it? Are we going to use the existing models out there, or are we going to actually make the investment in programming and data warehousing, so to speak, and everything else that it will take to build these tools ourselves? What are we going to do in that regard? So these are some of the considerations that businesses will want to think about when it comes to looking at, okay, what resources do we need when it comes to effectively working with these technologies? Next are legal and ethical considerations. Now, this is the last area that we're going to be talking about, but this obviously is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of some of the considerations that businesses will need to be thinking about. In this particular session, we just wanted to get you started on the road of being able to get your mind around what are some of the major areas of considerations that we need to look at as business leaders when we're starting to think about the impact that this set of technologies will have on our organizations and how to effectively leverage these technologies for our own benefit. Legal and ethical considerations. We've been talking about data security. And because of regulations, some of which are already here, like GPT, the GDPR. Sorry, I'm getting my acronyms confused. But a lot of businesses are already dealing with the implications around GDPR and California has some very strict regulations about data security and privacy and so forth that you need to be aware of, particularly if you're a business that does business nationally or internationally. So data security is an issue that spans a very, very large number of areas. You'll just want to be aware of what's coming down the pike as far as regulations, whether they be state, federal, or international. What tends to happen a lot of times, especially with businesses that are doing business nationally or internationally, is whatever the strictest set of regulations are, operate across the board based on those regulations. So as an example, the European Union, which is in the process of putting out a set of regulations around artificial intelligence that they've been working on for years. Their regulations tend to be more stringent than US regulations. Well, companies that are doing business internationally, it would be a nightmare to try to operate one way in the US and another way with your entities that are based in European countries. So the default is to use the most stringent set of regulations across the board, and that way you make sure that you're totally covered and that you don't get in trouble with anyone when it comes to regulations. The Biden administration recently released an executive order around artificial intelligence. And this is going to be an ongoing theme. This was probably the most rapid release of an executive order, especially around a technology in history, because ChatGPT just came on the scene about 13 months ago, and it exploded into the public consciousness very, very rapidly. And now everyone is scrambling to figure out, okay, how do we regulate this? Because the upside and the downside and the implications as a whole of these technologies are so enormous. So you'll want to keep up with the regulatory landscape and just be aware of how it will impact your particular organization. And then we've been talking about, data privacy, the impact of these technologies on your workforce. Well, one huge consideration is, as we're looking at how to implement artificial intelligence, how does it align with our cultural values? Okay. This is something that you'll need to think about. It will be, I'm not claiming that any of these are easy considerations and issues to think about, but I want to make sure that you're clear on the fact that these are things that you will need to think about, because they will definitely impact you, not just from a regulatory and a legal standpoint, but just in terms of your overall culture and how you think about your workforce, how you think about upskilling your workforce, how you think about using your talent internally as opposed to bringing people in from the outside, and many, many other considerations. So those are the areas that we wanted to touch on. Initially, making sure that you keep things at a strategic perspective first, before you start looking into, okay, what artificial intelligence tool do I want to start using? Starting to think about what some of the risks and rewards are of these technologies. And how do we build these into our planning process? Thinking about how this is going to impact our team and our people, and how to prepare them for what's coming, and how to try to make sure that we use these tools to help them be more effective in what they're doing. And what is required in terms of resources, both in terms of people, hardware, software, and any other resources. And then how do we look at this from a legal and an ethical standpoint? And how do we think about these issues in light of the culture that we're trying to build within our organization? Now, from here, what are next steps? Well, we'd encourage you to take the AI readiness assessment. I mentioned that this is a self-assessment that quickly, because again, you can do this in about 7 minutes, it helps you just get a bird's eye view of how prepared your organization already is to start taking advantage of some of the benefits of artificial intelligence. And in association with that, we do have a complimentary personal consultation. So what we would do in that 30-minute session is look at your results with you and offer some strategic insights on what to do in light of these results. And that's a session that's a Zoom session. There's no cost to you. And whether or not you do anything else beyond that with us, it will give you some good food for thought in terms of what to start thinking about, how to position yourself, and what you need to do to move forward in taking advantage of some of these technologies. We also are providing you with a book as far as one of the bonuses for registering for this session. So our colleague Bella St. John, who's an expert in productivity and leadership and leading technologies, has written a book called The AI AGI Revolution. And it goes into a lot more depth in terms of how to think about the impact of these technologies on your organization and frankly on you as an individual. So that's something that is made available simply when you registered. You'll be able to get that book. Now, the contact information for myself and for Mike Russell is here. Our email, I can be reached at stan@shrmarketing.com. I've also put my calendar link on that you can use for the 30-minute complimentary review of your self-assessment. And Mike Russell's information is here as well. He can be reached at mike@novusleadershipinstitute.com. So again, I want to thank you for joining us for this session. I hope it provided value just in terms of helping you to start thinking about, okay, what are the considerations that we need to look at when it comes to AI and what it can do for us? With that, we'll sign off. Have a great day.